The freedom to make a cup of coffee wasn't always possible for Robert Blue.
I have a manslaughter charge. I killed a friend in Fayetteville.
Blue is no stranger to life behind bars.
Moore County Jail, Burgall, Harnett.
He's been in and out of prison since he was 19.
I struggled with battling drugs all my life. And, you know, I was not normal.
Different is how he might describe himself. Robert sometimes refers to himself as Alana. He's transgender, an ID he says that didn't fit well for a place where expression can be limited.
They disrespected me, laughed at me, pushed me.
But Blue says it went beyond disrespect. During his roughly 10 years in North Carolina jails and prisons, he says he was sexually assaulted multiple times. The abuse, he says, was not only from inmates, but also detention officers.
I performed for the guards, you know. I did what I had to do.
Perform sexually?
Yes. It's corrupted. Very corrupted.
Spectrum News found Blue isn't the only one, and it's not just among the LGBTQ population. We filed a records request with the North Carolina Department of Public Safety and found a growing number of accusations. In 2014, there were 622 allegations of sexual misconduct or harassment in North Carolina prisons. In 2016, that number rose 35% to 839.
We have zero tolerance policy for sexual abuse and sexual harassment of offenders.
Charlotte Jordan Williams is the Prison Rape Elimination Act Director in the North Carolina Department of Public Safety.
We spend a lot of time educating offenders on what their rights are and ways to report.
A majority, or 54% of the cases, weren't allegations of inmates against inmates, but rather staff members abusing or harassing inmates. Of the total allegations from 2014 to 2016, 36% were unfounded, 54% were unsubstantiated.
Ultimately, we're always looking at how we can augment staffing with cameras, with mirrors. We're always looking at how we can do things differently and improve safety.
10%, or 209 of the cases, were substantiated, which NCDPS points out is a fraction of total staff members.
There's nothing private in the prison system.
Blue says inmates in jails, which are run by individual counties, are sometimes scared to report because they have to submit them in parts of the jail where everyone can see them.
The population is right there. They reading everything that you write.
We did find NCDPS takes action when allegations are found to be substantiated. The organization says from 2014 to 2016, 65 individual employees were terminated or resigned. Blue is just happy he's not back behind bars. He says he's been sober for around a year and is going through the gender transition so he can always be called Alana.
I'm learning to love myself, you know, accepting myself, and I don't have to live for anybody else anymore.
Sharon Garrison is always content behind a good book, but a few years ago it was hard to find much comfort.
All these people are staring at me as they're taking me to the back because they're sitting there watching the news, which I'm on. So, yeah, it was really uncomfortable and scary as hell.
It was her first time behind bars. The sentence was long.
The short of it is I was convicted of second-degree murder with conspiracy to commit first-degree murder.
She spent nearly a decade in North Carolina prisons and jails. Life in confinement isn't supposed to be easy, but Garrison says it was especially hard because of who she is.
I am bisexual.
Garrison says she and other LGBTQ inmates were sometimes targets of unfair treatment by detention officers.
I could be talking to my mom, anything. Hang up your phone call, it's a cell search. And I'm like, you just searched me. Like, why? And then she'll rip my whole cell apart, throw all my stuff out of my locker on the floor, and just tell me, clean it up, and walk away. Like, she was just mean.
When I first got here, there was a big room for improvement.
Aaron Sims is a detention sergeant at the Mecklenburg County Jail. He identifies as LGBTQ. He isn't familiar with Garrison's experience because she was never housed there. But he says when he arrived in Mecklenburg County 4 years ago, he knew changes had to be made.
One of the hardest things is kind of combat old tendencies. If you do the same thing over and over, you become complacent. You're not willing to open up your mind and change your view on it.
It's why the sheriff's office added an LGBTQ committee in March. The goal is to make sure the inmates, or residents as the sheriff's office calls them, are treated equally. That means an update of policies, new training, and how to respond to complaints from offenders.
Our job is not to be the judge or jury of why you're here, but while you're here, we want you to make sure that you have all the resources available to you.
It's not just about training detention officers, but also making sure LGBTQ offenders are in safe environments.
Prison and jails are full of predators. They prey on those that are weaker than them.
Kevin Walsh is the program director for the Center for Community Transition's Life Works program, which works with many ex-offenders.
For the most part, staff treats everybody the same, and that's maybe where the issues lie, in that there is no consideration for the LGBTQ population. They are more susceptible to things such as assaults.
It's why Garrison says changes are needed in many jails across the state.
I did break the law. That doesn't mean that I'm supposed to be treated different. Who you are is who you are. Because of my sexual preference, I shouldn't be treated different from someone else.
Garrison is now trying to return to life outside prison. She was released 4 years ago and is focused on holding down a job, finding permanent housing, and never going back behind bars.